What stunned observers wasn't just the tone of the response, but who delivered it. When Caitríona Balfe finally pushed back publicly, insiders described the moment as something she had avoided for years. The reaction appeared sharp, controlled, and unmistakably deliberate, aimed directly at Tony McGill. Within minutes, the calm narrative surrounding her private life fractured. For a long time, Caitríona Balfe was known for her restraint. She rarely addressed speculation, never escalated rumors, and consistently redirected attention back to her work. That consistency built an image of quiet authority, someone unwilling to be drawn into public conflict. This sudden shift signaled that a line had been crossed. According to sources close to the situation, the tension between Caitríona Balfe and Tony McGill had been simmering well before the public noticed. Disagreements over boundaries, visibility, and control reportedly stayed behind closed doors for years. Friends believed both sides were invested in keeping disputes private, even when frustrations grew. That effort, however, appears to have reached its limit. The moment everything changed was not dramatic on the surface. It wasn't a screaming match or a leaked argument, but a subtle public action that insiders say felt calculated. Caitríona Balfe's response carried an edge that left little room for reinterpretation. Those familiar with her communication style immediately recognized it as intentional escalation. What made the situation more volatile was the timing. The response arrived during a period when attention around her professional future was already intensifying. Any public deviation from her usual composure was bound to invite scrutiny. Instead of diffusing speculation, it amplified it. Behind the scenes, reactions were swift. Advisors and associates reportedly scrambled to assess the fallout, understanding that silence was no longer a neutral option. Once a boundary is challenged publicly, retreat becomes impossible without consequence. The response had effectively shifted the power dynamic. As discussion spread, another name was pulled into the narrative almost immediately. Sam Heughan found himself referenced across headlines and online commentary, despite having no visible role in the exchange. His connection to Caitríona Balfe made his presence unavoidable in public interpretation. Silence from him only intensified curiosity. For Sam Heughan, this was not unfamiliar territory, but it was particularly uncomfortable. He has long managed a careful balance between visibility and restraint, rarely engaging in personal controversy. Being drawn into someone else's conflict placed him in an impossible position. Any reaction risked misinterpretation. Insiders suggest that Sam Heughan was not consulted before the response went public. That detail matters, because it reframes his involvement as reactive rather than strategic. The absence of coordination fueled speculation that events were unfolding faster than anyone intended. Chaos thrives in moments like this. Public perception shifted rapidly. What initially looked like a personal dispute began to resemble a broader fracture, one with implications beyond two individuals. Fans dissected language, timing, and past behavior, searching for patterns that might explain the sudden escalation. Every previous silence was re-examined. The pressure on Caitríona Balfe intensified just as quickly. While some praised her for standing her ground, others questioned the decision to engage publicly at all. Once expectations form, they demand resolution, not restraint. The response had opened a door that could not easily be closed. Tony McGill's lack of immediate public reply only added to the tension. Silence, in this context, was interpreted in conflicting ways. Some viewed it as strategic restraint, others as confirmation of deeper issues. In the absence of clarity, assumptions multiplied. For those watching closely, this moment marked a turning point. It was no longer about isolated comments or private disagreements, but about control over narrative and perception. Caitríona Balfe's response signaled a refusal to continue absorbing pressure quietly. That decision reshaped the landscape around everyone involved. As the story continued to unfold, one reality became clear. Once personal tension spills into public space, it stops belonging solely to the people at its center. Sam Heughan's quiet entanglement, Caitríona Balfe's rare defiance, and Tony McGill's silence combined into a volatile mix. What followed would depend not just on words, but on who chose to speak next. The fallout from Caitriona Balfe's response did not settle quietly. Instead, it widened, pulling more voices into a conversation that had previously existed only as rumor. Industry insiders describe a rapid shift from damage control to long-term strategy, as it became clear the situation would not fade on its own. Once the narrative broke containment, every silence became louder than a statement. For Tony McGill, the aftermath introduced a difficult dilemma: respond publicly and risk escalating the tension, or remain silent and allow speculation to harden into belief. Sources suggest the choice to stay quiet was deliberate, rooted in the hope that restraint might slow the story's momentum. Instead, the absence of response was interpreted as confirmation by some and calculation by others. As attention intensified, the pressure shifted towards Sam Heughan, who now found himself positioned between two opposing narratives. He had not spoken, yet his name dominated discussions across platforms and headlines. Observers noted that neutrality, once his safest position, now appeared unsustainable. In moments like this, silence is rarely read as distance. Those close to Sam Heughan described the situation as uniquely precarious. Any public alignment risked alienating one side, while continued quiet invited accusations of avoidance. The very restraint that once protected his image began to work against him. The longer he remained still, the more others filled in the blanks. Behind the scenes, conversations reportedly grew tense. Advisors weighed the cost of intervention against the damage of inaction, knowing that even a carefully worded statement could ignite fresh controversy. Timing became critical, yet every moment that passed reduced the range of acceptable options. The situation demanded response, but punished impulsivity. For Caitriona Balfe, the days following her response brought a different kind of scrutiny. Supporters framed her actions as overdue self-defense, while critics questioned whether public confrontation was necessary. What both sides agreed on was that the moment marked a departure from her established approach. The restraint she had cultivated for years was no longer the defining feature of her public image. That shift carried consequences. Once an audience recognizes change, it expects continuity. Questions multiplied, not just about the immediate conflict, but about what else may have been withheld. The response reframed past silences, transforming them from professionalism into potential suppression. The dynamic between all three figures became increasingly difficult to untangle. What began as a personal boundary dispute evolved into a broader conversation about control, perception, and agency. Each individual now carried expectations shaped by narratives they did not fully author. The story had taken on a life of its own. Industry veterans often warn that these moments are the most dangerous, not because of what is said, but because of what audiences believe they are entitled to know. Emotional investment blurs lines between public work and private life. Once that boundary erodes, restoring it becomes nearly impossible. Every action is interpreted as symbolic. As speculation continued, small details gained outsized importance. A delayed appearance, a missed event, an ambiguous comment in an unrelated interview all became material for analysis. None of it existed in isolation anymore. Context was being rewritten in real time. Privately, there was recognition that no outcome would fully satisfy public curiosity. Any attempt to clarify risked further exposure, while retreat promised prolonged suspicion. The situation demanded a balance few managed successfully. It required precision, patience, and a willingness to accept temporary misunderstanding. What makes this moment particularly volatile is its timing. Careers at this stage are shaped less by momentum than by perception. Decisions now define legacy, not trajectory. Each move contributes to how the story will be remembered long after attention fades. As the narrative continues to evolve, one fact remains unavoidable. Once conflict enters the public arena, it stops belonging to those who started it. Caitriona Balfe's decision to push back, Tony McGill's restraint, and Sam Heughan's entanglement created a triangle of tension that cannot be resolved quietly. Whatever comes next will not erase this moment, only redefine it.